All right, welcome back to Humanity Ed. My name is Aaron.
I'm Julie.
And today's opening question, which normally on the podcast that I produce, they're pretty straightforward, they're pretty light. However, on Humanity Ed, we have a habit of digging into the depths of philosophy and education. And so today we're tackling Rousseau. What's his first name anyway?
Jean-Jacques.
Oh, of course it is. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, very French. So you talk about Rousseau believes that man is born good, but society ruins him. And Rousseau believes that the goal of education is to preserve the natural goodness, and through the act of, I think you said, negative education, which is imposing knowledge, removing the obstacles that would limit the child. Your question was... I wrote it down. How does this belief in a natural education play out in the public school system? And also, we will allow that Rousseau is very gendered in his view. That's probably putting it nicely in how he views education. So this also dovetails nicely with the actual naturalism philosophy and education that is a philosophy centered on learning through direct hands-on experiences within nature, emphasizing self-discovery, freedom from external control, and the natural development of the child. It advocates experiential learning by doing a flexible child-centered curriculum and a teacher's role as a facilitator who provides opportunities for observation and discovery. Key goals include fostering self-expression and the learner's ability to adapt to the environment through the discipline of natural consequences rather than the traditional punishments. Yada, 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 yada. It's apparently popular in Montessori and Waldorf schools.
Absolutely.
Both of which emphasizes child-centered learning and all those things that it's talking about. And it's rooted in naturalistic philosophies. Okay. It's really hard for me to be like, yeah, that's the way to do it, because we talked about this, I think, on the last episode, that you can't let a student just go with the natural, like, learning in in nature. Like, it just, especially when you start getting into middle school and high school, where you need critical thinking, where you need literature, where you need these things to be a part of their education. I always kind of like, it's a jarring experience to read into naturalism and Rousseau, of course, because it's emphasizing the role of nature in the development. And while that's important, I don't know. So here's the thing. It also, like, it's a theory that relates scientific method to philosophy by affirming that all beings and events in the universe, whether their inherent character may be, are natural. Consequently, all knowledge of the universe falls within the pale of scientific investigation. It's not that I don't like it. It's just that I don't like it.
Okay, so
it's because here's the thing. I am not a guy who has ever, because I've studied naturalism, I've studied a lot of these things in the beginning of my master's program. I've never been like, yeah, that's the one way to do it. I've always been no, like, multiple approaches is the best way to tackle education. So taking all of the isms together and like picking and choosing the pieces that you want to assemble in the final puzzle of your educational system, that I think is the better way to go. And I think it's hard to be like, oh yeah, here's how naturalism works really well, and I think it's one of the few ways the way it gets it right. I don't think, and this is going to sound really probably blasphemous or full of heresy in the scientific educational community, but I don't think that any of them have the right way locked in. I think they have a perspective. I think they've done testing, they've done all this, and it's worked to a certain degree, but it's also not. There's no silver bullet. There's no, this fixes everything. Here's the magical wand of education. We've solved it all. We can do it without any problems. When you're dealing with a country of 300 million people, and you're questioning how to make education work across that 300 million, from east to west, west to east, north to south as well, there's no one way that's going to work. There's no one approach that's going to be like, yeah, done, problem solved, we got education figured out. It's a constant moving target in a lot of ways, because you have to want, the teaching is not a a one size fits all. Now, the whole learning styles, that's a whole thing that we can get into at some point down the road, because there's a lot of recent information and recent studies that have shown that this learning styles thing that we've been, using for years is actually a misnomer, and it's a bit of a not so much that anymore. But an approach to education is always dangerous to say we have the one way, because it's similar to how religion ends up being a bit of a battle, because we have the one way, the one right here, and one right here. So I don't know. It's complicated, the answer, but it's also uncomplicated, because I don't think a natural education plays well as a strictly alone in the public education system. I don't think that it's a good idea to just be like, yeah, let's do this. Let's build a school around this. Now, mind you, the Montessori and Waldorf models, I'm sure they're successful, but there's been equal parts of concern about the Montessori model. There's been equal parts of concern about those models of like, are we actually doing a good job of educating a child for the future, or are we just doing what's making us feel good? Oh, they use nature. They're in nature. They're doing all these things. Like, okay, great, but what about this and that and the other thing? And then the answer is, well, it's like, no. It's not an all or nothing. It's let's do it as many different approaches as we can, so that we can reach as many kids and as many of those points as we can, so that we can get an education that actually works and functions, versus a system driven by ideology, driven by, this is the latest movement that's going to change the world. Well, we found out how well that worked. Okay, well, that didn't really work, so let's change it again and change it and change it. And by the time you're done, you've messed up at least a generation or two of students with your pathways. I don't know. I'm a bit of a rebel when it comes to like putting myself in a box with these. So there's my answer. When we come back from the intro music, which I'm going to make a mark, we will dig into Julie's response and the further discussion of Rousseau and everything else. So stick with us. You're listening to Humanity Ed. We'll be right back after this. All right, we're back to Humanity Ed after I have just laid out the case for nothing works and nothing's right and everything's wrong. I guess, Julie, what's your kind of perspective / response / thoughts on my wandering answer to the question, I guess?
You're dark, Aaron. You're so dark. You're so dark. Okay. So first of all, you put me in kind of a weird position.
You got to pull your microphone closer to your face.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's fine.
You've put me in kind of a weird position, because I have been very critical of Rousseau on Emile and his treatise of education for many reasons, which we can get into or not get into, but I do feel like I have to defend him a little bit here. What I'm going to come back and say is that, and I understand, I completely get your concerns that there's no right way. Yeah. And you can take anything to an extreme. And I also think your point that education that is strictly driven and informed by one ideological agenda is always going to be narrow in its vision and detrimental in some ways in its effects. So I just want to say that what Rousseau was aiming at was this idea that, and I think child-centered. When we talk about child-centered, we talk about something that just feels kind of maybe hippy-dippy or whatever. And, and kids going out in nature and hugging trees. That's not exactly what Rousseau was getting at. Right. He believed, so first of all, in his thought experiment, he imagined this. Now, this is for a middle class to maybe lower level noble education. Okay. And his goal is to raise this young man, Emile, who is his case study fictional student, to become rational, self-sufficient, and to be a citizen who can think for himself, not just accept ideas because they come from on high, whether that be government officials or church officials.
Yeah.
Somebody who can actually, so you were right when you brought in the scientific method as part of this. This is somebody who learns to use his skills of observation and combine rationalism with knowledge that is firsthand, that he takes in himself from his senses, and he is guided very much by a teacher. So this isn't just turning a child loose in nature, and it's not just only that. So there's actually 3 teachers that Rousseau sees. Okay. Nature is one teacher. Okay. Nature is one teacher. Ideas, objects, things, in other words, human creation and our world of culture and what we have in our developments and technology, art, etc., music, that is a teacher. And then the third teacher is humans, is humankind. But now here's where he has this caveat. He does feel like ultimately, you know, whatever we do that's good, he has a dark view. He's sort of like you and what you just said. He has a dark view of human nature, and he believes that for us to get better as a society and progress as a society, yes, we've achieved all these good things, but we also need somebody who is a very trusted moral guide, and, you know, and somebody who can, because there's a lot, we talked about this in the last episode. There is so much curriculum out there. You need a teacher who can guide you to what is worth knowing and who can make those decisions that is going to shape Emil's personality and his perspective. So in a way, it's kind of like I'm guiding you. I'm also seeing what your natural curiosity. And so from a very early age, it's like a focus on the child's physical and sensory learning. And in adolescence, the kiddos that we're dealing with in high school, the age of reason, that's when we start shifting to practical knowledge. That's when we start learning, you know, trades. Like Emil is trained to become a carpenter so that he can have a way to be self-supporting. We learn science through empirical studies. And then in adulthood, you're introduced, you know, and you are participating. You're not just introduced to it. You're an active participant in the world of ideas and social relations. And again, we're talking about social contract theory, but not learning those ideas through books, but through, I'm observing what these politicians are doing. I'm observing what my government is doing. I can see what I can support, and I can see what I can't support, not just because I'm towing a party line, but because I can think for myself. That is his ultimate goal. So I mean, you know, and here's what I would say. This is my last thought, and I'm going to throw it back to you. I would say that yes, we are not, you know, public schools generally don't take a lot of the approaches that they do in like the Waldorf and Montessori schools, which are not the same thing. There's differences there that we could talk about in a different show. But they, in some ways, think about how much time our kids get in nature. What do we have for lunch? Like 19 minutes? And they don't really spend that in nature. How much time do our kids get where they're actually out in the world exploring? Unfortunately, and that, I'm not just picking on us. I mean, I see this as a problem that we don't have enough time to be out in the world. Our kids don't have enough time. I'm not talking about field trips. I'm talking about, you know, exploring, participating, interacting with the world. Now, some schools have outdoor classrooms, but that was sort of a thing that was sort of in vogue in the early 2000s, and it's kind of fallen out of vogue.
It didn't really go anywhere.
I don't think it did, and I think it was not maybe introduced properly. And I know that the outdoor garden movement was kind of part of that as well. So I'm just asking, you know, can we find more balance? Is there something in Rousseau's idea that nature is our first teacher that maybe is worth exploring a little bit?
I think definitely if you're talking preschool, elementary age, and maybe into those first year of middle school possibly, I think there's a place for it also in middle school and high school, but I think there's balance because again, that the formative years and the years where we lose out on readers like from a literature standpoint, from a literacy teacher, from a language arts teacher, we lose out on the possibility of getting kids engaged at that age to read and to engage with materials. Elementary school kids are readers. They love to read. They're generally engaged with reading up till 4th or 5th grade, and then middle school hits, and there's a whole different ballgame when it comes to social engagement and phones and everything else. And kids are suddenly moving into, okay, well, I'm not reading. I'm browsing through Snapchat and TikTok, and I'm doing the social media stuff, and I'm hanging out with my friends, and we're just kind of doing whatever. And there's no longer that in a larger sense that reading and engaging with materials. It's not that I don't think Rousseau had a point. I think he did. I think absolutely nature is a great teacher. It just, I guess maybe the problem is it doesn't resound with me. It doesn't like go like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, Rousseau. Let's do that. You know, we're in a critical point where it comes to our scores with math and our scores with all, not specifically in our building, but in general in the community, scores are not great when it comes to certain things. And in the larger American sense, you know, certain parts of the country, their reading scores are terrible. Certain parts of the math scores are terrible, because in some ways, this idea of nature as a teacher has become. So it's the pendulum swing, right? So the pendulum swings. If it sits in the middle, it's fine. It's moderate. We have a moderate response. We have a moderate curriculum, moderate whatever. But because we live in a world where the pendulum just doesn't stop swinging, you know, sometimes that swinging in the naturalism world swings so far that they forget to, we actually have to teach some of this actual right reading, and we have to teach some of these things, and they're so far stuck on the outdoor classroom or the naturalism or those kinds of things that those students miss out on, we actually have to learn how to do math problems, we have to learn how to read, we have to do these things, and then it's like, yeah, well, we were too busy over here trying to make Rousseau happy or whoever else, Montessori and whoever else, and then we've done a disservice to our students where they're not engaging with the material that they're going to have to tackle eventually. They're going to have to really know how to read, critically think, and examine. So I think my problem is that it just doesn't like. I've never been it's not that I'll say it. I've never been a fan of naturalism. I don't. It's not my jam. I think because of how it's sold and of how it's used. Because you talk about like scientific method and all these things. I think because it talks about like values the social and emotional development, creating a supportive and nurturing environment, should help the students develop their social and emotional skills. So in some ways, some school districts have done this, and I haven't been a part of, like in my field experience days and my student teaching days. I think I experienced it, and it may have been one of my field experiences where like the restorative justice circles, like the circle, whatever that circle's called, or circle of circle of justice, or
restorative circles.
Restorative circle, there it is. And they would do it every single day, and it just became like why are we doing this? Like the kids, there wasn't enough. It just became a joke. It wasn't useful anymore. And so that's that pendulum, right? Okay, so restorative justice is important. There needs to be a sense of that, but doing it every day, no matter if there was a situation that required it or not, it becomes why are we doing this? Like we are using time that we could be using learning. The students are treating it as a joke. They're not engaging with it. This restorative circle is not working. It's not functioning the way it needs to be functioning because we've and again, this happens because district policy or district ideas, they get this, we can do this thing and we can do a thing. Here we go. And we're doing restorative circles and restorative justice. And then it just becomes a thing where it's like we're so focused on that program and so focused on doing all of it that we forget, by the way, we're supposed to be teaching kids. We're supposed to be educating them. And so then when we talk about time in classroom and time in education and instructional time, we've sacrificed that because, we got to have restorative justice. That's the new buzzword, this new thing. And I'm not saying that restorative justice is wrong. I absolutely think it needs to happen. It's an important part of what we do here at our school here locally. But we do it in a way where it's situation based. It's based on, we need to have this conversation. We need to, we've had a situation develop. We need to have a restorative justice conversation, or we need to have a restorative whatever. We need to restore that relationship, yada, yada, yada. But in some schools, and I fear it's a larger amount, maybe not as much today, but for a while, restorative justice was how those buildings ran. And it was a big part of the program, because then they could say to the community, look what we're doing. We're doing restorative justice. We're helping kids. We're helping them regulate. We're helping da-da-da-da. It's like, that's great. But what are you teaching? are you teaching anything? Are they learning anything? Or are your scores in the toilet like everywhere else because you haven't taken the time to actually do the learning, the teaching and the learning? And so, again, that pendulum, right? So you can't, it has a habit of, in American culture, we go on one end or the other. We don't sit in the middle and go, hey, how do we equally apply all this stuff and actually have a functional, cohesive educational system? No, we're too busy going, oh, well, here's this, well, here's that, well, here's this, well, here's that. Oh, we're going to go back to basics now. And we spend so much time on a roller coaster of programs that when you try to go do the testing, the results are skewed or jacked or messed up because guess what? We haven't let it actually work for 10 years. There's a lot there. Anyway, so like that's my concern is that we don't know how to be moderate in how we do the isms or whatever, or even like naturalism. We very rarely will practice the moderate response or the moderate whatever to it. We're more excited about, ooh, this is a new program. Oh, it's gonna change the world. And this is gonna sound dark, but you can't change the educational world with a program. It requires a lot. It requires culture change. It requires curriculum change. It requires sometimes teacher change. It can require admin change. The system of education is not something that, oh, we'll just flip on a dime with this one little program that we've decided to pay money for, or that we're gonna have a consultant come through and do a thing, or we're gonna have a speaker who's gonna talk about it. We're gonna seize on that speaker, and that's gonna be our thing. It doesn't work. Something that's interesting. So in our district, we use Capturing Kids' Hearts, and we've been using it for many years. I started. This is my 8th year. So that first year we didn't really do it. We hadn't started it, but that second year, halfway through the second year, we started Capturing Kids' Hearts, and I got sent to do it. And so I started that in my classroom. It's been a part of our district ever since. And the important thing is that it's used. Now, whether or not it's used in individual classrooms and individual buildings to the efficacy that it needs to be, that's beyond my pay grade. That's beyond my understanding. But since the program has continued, we haven't abandoned it. We haven't given up on it. We haven't stopped it. We've done the work. In our building specifically, we were awarded the champions of Capturing Kids' Hearts because we didn't give up on it, because we kept that program going. We gave it time to show its efficacy, and we've seen the results of that, and the program will continue on and on. A lot of times in schools, they'll start a program for 2 or 3 years, and then they'll abandon it, or they'll change to another program, or they'll do another curriculum, or they'll switch it around. So we're starting a counseling program this year that I'm sure we'll do for several years to go and more. It'll be a part of our program because our district seems to be focused on long-lasting effects and long-lasting investment. But I think we're the exception to the rule of that. There are school districts out there who will do a year of the program, or 2 years, or maybe 3 years, and then it's like, okay, we did our 3 years, and it doesn't work anymore. We don't think it works. We're going to get abandoned. It's like, that's the moment you go, we need to do it for another year and see what continues, and like give it at least 5 to 7 years for it to work its way through your system, because then you'll know, yeah, it's working, or this was not a good investment. We need to reevaluate and come back to the table. So I said this before in previous episodes. That's a long answer to your short question, and I'm sure it's sparked more questions or more statements from you. But I'm never going to be a guy who's like, yeah, this is the way to do it. I want to be like, well, that's one way of approaching it. What's another way? What else can we partner with that? What other ism can we match well with this? This will do one thing, but this will also catch everything else, and then that overall will handle what we need to handle. And okay, cool, we got it. But that's a personal opinion, and that's not a district opinion. That's not a. I don't want to say it's not a professional opinion, but because a professional opinion would be far more based in statistics and citations and everything else. A lot of what you do, but I'm just kind of like, I kind of go, wow, this is what I feel. This is what I know. This is what I've seen in my now 8 years of teaching, and so it's. I don't know. There, I'm finished. I've said my pieces, or my current piece for that, I suppose.
Okay. Well, Aaron, I think you're ultimately, and I mean, I admire it because you have a pragmatism that I think is really guiding your vision of what education needs to be. Here's what we need to do. How are we going to get there? Yeah. And like you, I have taught in schools where restorative circles, I did that in Denver at a school, was a part of the required curriculum. Yeah. And and I think, it does feel in some ways kind of false to or it the scenario that you're creating with those circles. Sometimes you don't have a lot of buy-in with the kids, and it can take time away from the curriculum. I know if you do anything, and like you said, there's no magic bullet. If you over rely on anything, it's not going to give you the results that you're looking for, and it's not going to get us to where we need to be. And so I think part of it is defining our goal. And if our goal is we want well-educated, self-directed thinkers who can critically engage with the world and the problem and can socially engage in positive, constructive ways with each other. We want people who can problem solve and think out of the box, and we want people who can be creative and who also can be joyful. I'm adding my personal piece to it too, because I think what you're not saying, and I just want to clarify this in case anybody listening thinks that Aaron is saying this. You are my friend, and I know you, and I don't think that you are saying we need to have a very, kind of like Metropolis driven, and sorry, that's a movie reference, view of education where, we're creating these, almost like the old Soviet system. We're creating these workers who they have language and they have math and they have science, and then they can go out and we're not just trying to educate them into the ground so that they can just work. The goal is much more holistic than that, and
I think here's the problem with that is, no, I'm not suggesting we go the Soviet route, although sarcastically I say this, please keep this in mind. It would be so much easier if we could.
Oh, sure.
Like, oh my gosh, for all the only piece of the Soviet socialist world that I would be like, sure be nice, but it would fail. It'd be awful. It's terrible. It's it's bad. But I'm saying this very sarcastically. Hear me loud and clear on this. It'd be nice if we could do it. But I don't mean that. I'm making a joke. It's just a joke. I think part of the problem is why, even if we were to go crazy and say, let's put the Soviet system in place, let's do it. Let's make these kids workers and everything. What the concept of work has changed dramatically, even in the last 24 years since I graduated high school. What work looks like, how do kids get into the workplace, what kind of jobs do they perform, their perception of the world a lot of time is colored by the fact that they're like, I'm just gonna be a social media influencer, I'm gonna be a YouTuber, I'm gonna do these things. And that concept of work is very different from the 8 to 5, 9 to 5, 8 to 6, whatever, the work that I feel like myself and Julie were used to growing into and being a part of. When I was 15 and a half, I started working in my dad's office. When I was 16, I worked as a receptionist at Grey Clips. I graduated to King Soopers as a bag boy. And then I graduated ever so quietly and up the line of getting better and better jobs, but I was always working. In the time since I've been, I guess 24 years, in the 24 years since I graduated high school, I have worked at least mostly full-time to some part-time gigs when I was doing college or whatever I was doing, because that was what brought me satisfaction of being able to get a paycheck and pay the bills and do the work and get to know people at work and have some kind of fulfillment in my job. So, but that is no longer what young adults are. That's not the perspective of young adults. There are enough videos on YouTube, there's enough evidence on social media to suggest that we have created people who don't want to work. We have created people who don't think that work is worthy. We've created a generation or multiple generations of people who feel like they should be able to make the rules in the workplace. There are countless stories of recently with the TikTok trend, the office siren, and how people are like, oh, I'm dressing to be the office siren. And then they're like, and I got fired because I was dressing inappropriately. And they have a dress code. Like, it's wild. There's a generation who believe that they should set the rules, that the dress code is not, no, that's not what it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to be able to dress how I want. I need to be comfortable, blah, 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 blah. And so there's this idea of, well, we haven't prepared a generation to actually do the work, to go work at a part-time job that sucks. And this is, again, a bit of a rabbit trail, but the thing about high school jobs, Those high school jobs are designed to tell you and to teach you don't want to do this for the rest of your life. Get an education, learn more, get better, get certificates, get your diploma, go to college, go to trade school, do whatever you got to do because you don't want to work at this job for the rest of your life. That's what high school jobs are designed to do. And so when people are like, "Oh, I hate working," I'm like, "Good, that's the point. That is the absolute point of those jobs. They are not supposed to be jobs that you want to work as a bag boy for the rest of your life." I mean, yeah, you graduate into cashier, but is that really what you want? Is that how you want to spend your life? And there's nothing wrong with people who have worked their lives in grocery stores. I'm not denigrating their situation. What I am denigrating is we have young, functional, young adults who turn their nose up at a job that it sucks. I don't want to work there. It's Dairy Queen. It's McDonald's. I'm like, suck it up, Buttercup. Like, you have to want work is a part of life, and work is the thing that gets us the money so we can do things. And you can't just not do work. Like, that's, and people be like, "Oh, it's capitalism. Capitalism sucks." Well, I don't think any of the other options are really great either. Like, you talk to me about socialism, you're talking about communism. Those two things are a bad idea. No, ma'am, no, sir, no, thank you. Get them out of here. I don't want to touch them. I don't want to even talk about it. But there's people out there who are like, "Well, if we had socialism, we'd have government-run grocery stores." Yeah, that doesn't work out very well either. They had one, I think it was down in either Texas or somewhere where they were running it, and it might have been Kansas, somewhere. But it didn't work, and the shop is now failing and falling apart because it was a government-run. And so my point is that we've done a disservice through our educational system as a whole, the big E, the overarching education system, of preparing our young adults for work. Because they don't want to. It's too hard. Oh, I don't want to go. It's too many hours. Did I like my job at King Soopers when I worked as a bag boy? No. But guess what I did like? I liked the money. Because I made money. It gave me, I engaged in the service. They paid me for my service. I could use that money to pay my car insurance bill, to pay for my gas. I could use that money to then do the things that I wanted to do in life. And no, I did not want to work at King Soopers for the rest of my life. I climbed the ladder and eventually got jobs and got to the point where I was like, I'm doing well enough, but now I want to go to college and get my bachelor's, and so I went back. So there was a lot in that whole situation, in that conversation, but there's something about how we're teaching kids about work and what is important that's failing as a big umbrella over all education across the country. Because there's obviously exceptions and there's obviously going to be rules in there. But as an overall feel, I feel like we haven't, for whatever reason, something happened in the last 5 to 7 years where our kids graduating are just, a lot of them are not understanding that having a job is important. You got to do it. Like, you can't just be a YouTuber. You can't be a social media influencer. You can't just coast. You have to actually contribute to society, which is again where we start to get into that whole like, we're flirting with socialism now, because we have to contribute. You have to contribute to society. There's a reason why in I think it's Japan, their birth rates are falling, and they're really concerned about the falling birth rates in Japan. China's a whole other issue, but certain countries are experiencing falling birth rates, and that's a concern because if we lose population, well, that can critically affect our ability to have programs and to have like all these kinds of things that we enjoy as a country, as a community. Well, if we don't have enough people to do that with, we got a problem. And so that's, again, an ancillary conversation that I just threw in there because why not? So yeah, I should stop talking because I'm going to keep talking in circles now. But does that make sense? Like and it's not our job to teach about work, but it's also our job to encourage kids to work hard and that grit, that determination. You could call it, quote unquote, the American dream, if you will. Like that you can do things. You can do tough things. You can do hard things. And you can get through this. You can get over this. You can push past this. You have the ability to do this. You need to do this. Versus it feels like we're not, the message from culture is, you don't, if it's hard, self-care, it's okay if it doesn't work. It's fine. No! We gotta have some strength in us. We gotta have some grit, get some gravel in our shoes and our feet and our knees as we're like fighting our way through. Like, I don't know. It's a side passion of mine.
Really?
You were typing furiously over there as I was talking.
Not typing furiously.
So I'm curious. I'm curious to see what you have to say.
I'd say it's more than a little passion. You got feelings, you know.
I have feelings.
Yeah.
It doesn't make me right though.
No,
it just makes me have a lot of feelings.
It doesn't make you wrong either. I do want to, if I can, just for a second.
Absolutely.
So some of what you were just saying about getting gravel in your shoes and grit in your kneecaps and whatever. Okay, so to bring it back to Rousseau for
Please
just
do.
a minute, and again, I don't know that he's like I would not say that he should be our guide going forward in any way,
Right.
but I think his treatise was very influential for a couple of 100 years and really did set some things into motion, and probably this legacy of the naturalist ideas in education, for whatever directions they've gone, good or ill, they do come back to him. And I will tell you, Rousseau's idea of the tutor or the teacher for a meal didn't go easy on him.
Yeah.
He drove a meal. He made, and so now imagine this. You talked about, some of the things that with our kids, we need to prepare them for in the world.
Yeah.
Why couldn't we take kids out into the outdoor spaces and have them construct outdoor garden boxes to learn about math? Why can't we take kids to a campfire and have them sit around a campfire at night, make their tents, pitch a tent, create a meal, create a little community? And I know why we can't do these things, because we have limited time. Let me just get
and
this
money.
out. Yeah, let me just get this out, because I was for a while, for about 3 years, I was a sponsor of a Girl Scout troop.
Okay.
And we did get to do some of these things. And, and I think about times sitting around a campfire. Now imagine taking a piece of literature, like, I don't know, Frankenstein, Wuthering Heights, Hamlet, whatever, and you're reading it around a campfire at night with a bunch of kids. That scene, I think, is kind of cool. And I think learning hands-on, I think you can do science. I think you can do math. I think you can do literature and art. The only thing is, we do have so much that we're trying to do, and we have such limited time, that these kind of activities, they do tend to fall to extracurriculars, like the cooking club and the creative club that you're sponsoring and things like that. However, I would say that this is not soft curriculum. These activities, when you're doing creative club, when students are coming together and cooking a meal, and working together and cooperating and cleaning up and everything else, they are learning valuable life skills, and it's ethical, and it's also I think it's also, in a way, something that could get to your passion point, that we are raising a generation of post-industrialized world, self-indulgent, entitled people who maybe don't feel like things matter. And I think, and what popped into my head at one point when you were talking is, kind of an idea, when did we have kids drop out and feel entitled? Well, if you talk to people in the 1960s, adults in the 1960s, they're going to tell you it was that generation. But maybe it's just, they weren't, those kids and what they were passionate about, and to some extent they were seen as self-indulgent and entitled. They weren't entirely heard. And, and maybe what we have now is we have a world where kids are scared. There's a lot that they're scared about. And, and if they're not wanting to participate, if they're not wanting to do the 9 to 5 thing, maybe it's because they don't clearly see what good that is going to get them in the world. And I'm not saying Rousseau is the answer. But what I am saying is, when you talk about the idea of balance, maybe if we got them out in the world more, maybe if there was a little bit more of that, where they could see that, I've got, not only do I have some skin in the game, I can make a difference here. Maybe that would build their confidence, and maybe that would build not just their confidence. Confidence isn't the word I'm looking for. Maybe that would build their commitment, their passion, their buy-in to where, yeah, I mean, I've got to do hard work. I'm not going to get where I want to be instantly. But
Yeah.
you know what? I can do hard things. And I can see that if I do something hard
Yeah.
and I put this hard work in,
Yeah.
that I can grow something good for it. That's what I think, I mean, if you plant a garden and your garden grows, I mean, there's very tangible results right in front of you. And
Yeah.
maybe that is a metaphor for thinking about working as a bagger at King Soopers and getting to where you want to be in life later.
Yeah.
We all got to start somewhere. I don't know. I just think that there's some questions there that we could explore about the world and our role as educators. And and yes, I mean, I know science teachers can, and maybe to some extent you and I in our roles can bring the world into the classroom, but what about bringing kids out into the world?
Well, I've made this point to kids in my classroom, not just in the alternative high school I teach at, but when I taught 6th grade for 2 years. I would look at kids and I say, look, the world is a lot bigger than just Fort Morgan. Fort Morgan is a small town. It's about 13,000 maybe tops in the city. County is upwards of 25,000 when we talk about all of Morgan County. But it's a small town, and there's a lot of times where I think our kids get stuck in the idea that this is all that it is. This is all there is. I can't get out of here. I'm never going to leave. And this is my world. This is what I know. But when you show them, you take them on a tour of Times Square, or you show them somewhere else where things are different and it's bigger and it's more wondrous. I think a lot of times kids kind of go, oh, well, there's a possibility that I can move on into that world, that I can go to that world if I want to, that I can be a part of that world. And work hard to get there. I think that's the piece that we have to work on, helping our students understand, and not just students here in Fort Morgan, but students across the country, that the world is bigger than where you are, and there are far more experiences, there are far more adventures, there are far more things to learn in the world than just here. And I think that compiled with the idea of grit and determination and courage and strength. And yes, you can get there. You can do this. Let's do this. Let's not give up. Let's not quit because it's hard. Let's not get tired because it's hard. Let's get our count. Let's get in our cardio. Let's do the things that we need to do to get where we need to go, because we all have a place to go. We all have a destiny. We all have a future. We all have something that is going to take us where we want to go. But it takes work. It takes creative thinking. It takes a lot of things to get there, and that's the beauty of it. You can learn all those things. It's not impossible. Nobody is dumb. Nobody is an idiot. Everyone has the capacity to learn. Everyone has the capacity to engage with material and to seek it and to pursue it. I think there's some part of that also there. There's just not an interest in learning because the world is there. Like I can just Google that. Yeah, that's great, but you need to learn it. You need to engage with it. You need to confront it. You need to wrestle with it. And I think a lot of times we talk about apathy is like, well, kids will just be like, oh, I can just Google it. It's like, well, yeah, but there's no learning happening there. And so in some ways, the natural world is a problem, because in Rousseau's days, they didn't have Google. They didn't. They may have had encyclopedias, whatever, but we have literally a phone where we can say, okay, what happened at Pearl Harbor? Oh, I know it now. There it is. Copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, copy, paste. The phone has become not just a crutch, but a part of our thinking. In Google Drive, in ChatGPT, in Facebook, in all of our applications, I fastidiously avoid them because, like, Google say, help me write. I'm like, no, not help me write. But we've created through a lot of AI augmented services the idea that someone will write it'll write me the email for me. We're no longer challenged to think for ourselves because we've given over that control both to the power of just Googling the answer, but also the continuing rising influence of AI and how that's influencing our writing and our learning and everything else. And so, yeah, unfortunately, I think his message isn't as relevant today because the natural world has become so much more complicated and so much more invaded by technology and the internet and phones and social media and Google and all the other Facebook and everything else, that it's very hard maybe to kind of to your point of what you're talking about, what we need to do. It's very hard to see the natural world anymore because the natural world for a lot of our students doesn't exist. Because they don't see it. They don't look at it. They look at their phones. They look at their screens. They look at their TVs. They look at their whatever. They very rarely will be like, ooh, look at that. That's a tree. Ooh, that's a park. I'm going to go hang out at that park for a little bit. Like, oh, I'm going to go take a walk and then look at the beautiful greenery. Not a lot of them are doing that because they're so blinded by all the technology and all the mechanical and electronical stuff in their lives that the natural world doesn't exist to them anymore. And that's probably the problem is that Rousseau's argument might still be able to be made in some ways, minus his other problematic content. But kids don't want it. They are content to be on their phone, to be on their computer, to be, whatever. That's the natural world for them. The natural world is now the cyber world for them.
But are they content? Are they?
Of course not. They're absolutely miserable. They hate it. They won't tell you that, but they hate it. Like, studies have shown the rise in narcissism, the main character syndrome. I mean, it is not a simple. It's not the answer to that one is easy. They are miserable.
And depression.
Yeah, depression, mental health issues have spiked. Social media is part of the problem, but I think the internet by far is the greatest cause of a lot of these issues because again, we've taken away nature and we replaced it with the Matrix. That's hyperbole, forgive me, but it's the only accurate thing I can come up with in my head of like we don't have trees anymore. We have I can go and play in the whatever 3D world, or I can go play a game where it looks just as real, or I can go put on my goggles and go visit this, and I don't have to leave my room. And it's like, we are messing up the future with all of this. So I mean. I don't have a solution. I mean, my solution is to unplug the internet and start all over again, but that's not going to work because that would get me into trouble and probably arrested.
So, I mean, it feels like you're kind of taking my kind of neo-Luddite position in some ways that I usually take, but
throw all the shoes in the machinery. Let's sabotage it all, baby. Let's go.
But
just kidding. Don't do that.
But I wonder, though, Aaron, because, I mean, I keep thinking about this as an image that keeps popping into my mind. We have such limited time with our kids, even though the school day is long. It is so regimented and so segmented, and I'm not proposing that we do away with the model or whatever because it works and we are getting our kids we're moving them through for good or for ill. But again, back to this question of balance, because so yes, I understand what you're saying, and it's disturbing to me your comment that nature is no longer relevant, and I'm just sort of like, there's all kinds of wrong there in what you just said. And so I'm imagining this scene, a couple of teachers, maybe a group of 2 to 3 teachers, taking these kids, and we live in a beautiful state right here in Colorado.
Yes, we do.
On a camping trip, and now we're all sitting around, and the kids, of course, have their cell phones and they're posting and everything. And
we take that. We put that. There's those magnetic bags you can seal stuff in. We would seal it in there, and they don't.
So
because you got to get the addict off of it somehow, and they got to have the shakes for a couple hours before they start to actually kind of connect.
Exactly. So I mean, like, imagine it's like story time, and and they already got their social media. Hey, look at me! I'm out by a pine tree. Kind of posted and whatever. We let them get that out of their system, and now we've got a group of maybe 6 to 8 kids, and we're sitting around a campfire and we're reading a story, and there's no cell phones and there's no sound except of the person talking and the crackling fire and the smell of the firewood, and we're all sitting there together. I think that could actually be something that could leave a lasting impression. Just the idea of it leaves a lasting impression for me.
Yeah, I agree.
So And so to me, it's like that could be a way to kind of like, from my mind, to get back to the idea that there is still relevance in the world. And guess what? It's the only one we have. And we are in some really dire straits in terms of what we are doing to our natural world, in terms of pollution and sea level rises and all kinds of other things. And I'm not getting into a climate change debate. I'm just saying,
Good.
we need
Because that's a whole other podcast on its own.
We need not only to be stewards of our world, we need to be, active participants in our world outside of our man-made constructs and our technology. And also, I guess in some ways, and I'm not going in a religious direction here or necessarily even a spiritual direction, but thankful and appreciative
Right.
for I think that probably I guess I am kind of making a normative argument, something moral in terms of seeing beyond technology. And I think you can't see beyond the thing that you are so attached to. If it's the only thing that you see, it's the only thing that you see, you have to be challenged to see beyond it.
No, so what I've had this conversation with people before, and even with students. People of a certain age, we grew up in an analog age where there were no cell phones, and so I know what it means to disconnect. It's really easy. Like, I can put this down and I don't feel like grabbing for it. Like, there will be times where I'm like doing my writing and I don't think about this phone for an hour or two, and I'm like, oh, I gotta check it out. But I have gotten to a better place where I don't constantly reach for it, or I don't go for it, because I have other things I'm interested in. Like, I'll play my computer games, or I'll write my stories, or I'll do reading, or I'll go to the gym, or I'll do whatever. Like, I have a healthy relationship now with my phone, more so than I have before. But that's because I've realized that I need to connect with the world around me. I need to connect with things that bring me joy. I need to connect with things beyond the screen. And that's my challenge of figuring out how to do that with our students, because through, right, wrong, or indifferent, there's no judgment here, but we use Chromebooks. We have all of our curriculums on the Chromebooks. And I understand the why. I will never say we shouldn't have computers in education, because how are the kids going to learn? There are kids who don't know how to use computers because they've only used their phones. And so getting them on a Chromebook is an experience sometimes with them going, I don't know what I'm doing. And it's like, well, you got to learn, because eventually you have to type at your job, and you can't do HunPEC. You actually have to learn how to do the typing. So I think there's elements of having that digital lifestyle that we still need to be taught. But someday, maybe this push for everything to be electronic and online, the pendulum may swing back more to a moderate view. Mm-hmm. We've talked about in your class specifically, you have textbooks, and some students are preferring the textbooks over the computers because they feel more of a connection with the work, and they're able to kind of not have to worry about going to Google or going to a website that they don't, that's distracting them or whatever, where they can sit there and work through the book and look at the answers and look the answers up in the book, like in the chapter 4, and they can go scan it and whatever, and they can figure it out. It's a weird thing to say that in 2025, that maybe we should have gone back to textbooks. Maybe textbooks are the answer. And mind you, I don't like the textbook companies because they cost us an arm and a leg, and they're not cheap. No cheaper than the actual electronic versions of their curriculum, but that's what it is. But what if that's the answer? What if the answer to all of this is back to textbooks, back to pen and paper or pencil and paper, back to that world, so that those phones can legitimately be locked up at the front desk and open at the end of the day? Like, again, this is a wild theory. This is not me saying we're doing this tomorrow, but education is about education. We're educating humans, and humans have a way that we learn overall. We've learned through COVID and everything else that online learning is not the way to go. Online learning in your little bedroom with a computer in front of you and going through the motions is not a way to learn. That's not a critical thinking. That's not going to breed critical thinking. It's going to breed indifference and apathy and everything else that we struggle with. Versus if you're in a classroom, even if you're self-paced and you've got someone working with you and checking in with you, you're a lot more accountable to that. But not only that, you're not staring at a screen all day. You're actually putting your eyes to paper. You're finding your resources in your book. You're writing down the answers. You're getting explanations from your teacher as a support. And I know, like, we have Chromebooks. That's the future. But we are in that future, but it's also just like, what if the possibility is that there's a more moderate engagement with curriculum and teaching that we lost in our conversion to the Chromebooks? Like, what if it's Chromebooks but also textbooks? What does that look like to have a hybrid? Because this has been a conversation before about hybrid learning, and using textual stuff but also using computers, and how do we do that, and what does it look like? It was a big buzzword couple of years ago during the pandemic, hybrid learning, because everyone was trying to figure out what to do. And I don't think we ever really identified what hybrid learning meant. I think we meant, hybrid learning is where you're at home and the teacher's on the screen and that. But what if hybrid learning is not that? What if hybrid learning is textbook and paper but also computer? What if there's a way to mix those two? What if there's a way to still have that textbook and to still have, the actual book reading? And again, probably literacy scores would probably go up a little bit if we had that, versus reading a question on the internet and Googling the answer, copy and pasting. So here's the thing, like, if you have a textbook in front of you, you still have to go find the answer. You can write the answer exactly as it's there, but you're reading and then you're transposing and you're engaging that part of your brain that's doing the work. And so maybe that's the answer. Maybe that's part of our answer to the literary, to the illiterate conversation or literate conversation. Kids don't read primarily because they know the easy way to just copy the question, Google it, and then copy and paste. Problem solved. Versus, I have to go in the book and I got to find the chapter that was mentioned, or I have to look to my notes where I wrote down the notes on that. There's the answer. Okay, cool.
So thought experiment for you. I mean, because I'm really interested in what you're saying. I'm intrigued. What if something like that were to happen? This is a thought experiment.
Right.
Only. Imagine, like 3 days a week, of course, we've got the regular Chromebook days and that schools have moved to, and and there's such a big push. I mean, that's something that teachers are also, that's part of how we're evaluated, is our use of technology, our knowledge of technology.
Yeah.
But what if one day a week it was an unplugged day?
Right.
And on top of that, and here's a really radical Rousseauian idea for you, what if part of that day, for maybe some extended period, an hour out of that unplugged day, we walked to a park together, and students had an extended lunch in the park, and maybe even an opportunity. We brought a bunch of books into the park, and you read in the park, and we did something like that.
Yeah.
I guess my thinking is, and I'm not a psychologist, but my thinking is that somehow maybe that taking that deliberate time out of the curriculum, where it's just kind of soft time, that maybe when students came back, they would be not as resistant to engaging, and they would be more productive because they've had a little bit of a release. They've breathed some fresh air. What about this as an activity? We all go to the park. We all have paper and pens. You all lay on your backs on blankets, and you sketch the clouds.
Right.
Make cloud sketches for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't take photographs with your phones of the clouds. No phones, but sketch the clouds.
Yeah.
Talk to each other. Blow bubbles in the park. I mean, or we fly kites one day to talk for wind. Whatever, that kind of a thing, and then we come back, and then I don't know. It's an intriguing idea.
I think you start with unplugged days and you build towards that, because you can't expect them to put their phones away if you're not unplugging. So start the process, like for us, maybe example for me, like every Friday or maybe Thursdays on early release days or whatever, like I would have an unplugged day in my classroom, and whatever work they do in that class time, that counts for an assignment. So, okay, cool. You hung with me for the full 45 minutes. You turned in what you got. We did some work. Cool. You will get credit towards an assignment that you complete with me in a normal classroom. You do that consistently, that unplugged Thursday or unplugged Friday or whatever day it ends up being, and you do that for a month straight. So that's 4 days, 4 days, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 days that month. And you see how it worked. Did they take to it? Did they unplug? Did they put their phones away? Did they empty their pockets? Whatever. And we just had a full okay, cool, it worked. Okay, do it for another month. And at that second month, you go, okay, our goal is to build towards doing something like this, going to the park and or just going out on the sidewalk and looking up in the sky, like starting slow, because taking them to a park takes time. It takes effort. It takes supervision, and you start slow. You say, okay, we'll go out on this side of the street where there's grass, and you'll sit in the grass, and you'll just look up in the sky, and you'll draw the clouds, and then we'll go back inside. And then after that, and then the third month in, you say, okay, cool, we did that. We do the Unplugged Fridays. Now our goal in the third month is we're going to get to go to the park. And so you segment it, so you build it up. So it's a step. So they are learning how to manage their business and also to like pay attention and take part and engage in class, so that in by that 3 month mark, yeah, you've earned the park. We've shown we can handle this, cool. We've shown we can handle this, cool. We show we can handle this, cool. Next. And it becomes a situation where you level, so that when you get to a point where you're able to do it every other week or something like that, it's not like a worry of like, oh, is somebody going to run or somebody going to do something wrong or whatever. It's like, no, we've all figured out this is the social contract that we've accepted of how we're going to behave and how we're going to do this. So yeah, every Friday we do an Unplugged Friday, and then like once a month, at the end of the month, after we've done all our Unplugged Fridays, we go to the park for a little bit and we do a thing, and then we come back and we get back to work. So it's culture. It's you don't go shock and awe. You go incremental pieces and parts of like, here's how we're starting, here's what we do, and then we get more responsibility. You get more freedom as you prove that you're going to be able to handle this, and then you go, okay, cool, we've fully done it. Let's do it.
And I love that. And just again, this is just a thought experiment, but just building on that, the point is not just to give them, oh, this is just free time in nature just to chill. It's actually still active engagement, active learning time. So just as an add-on to that, imagine that there becomes, it is still teacher directed in some ways.
Yeah.
We're giving them activities to do in nature or outside, and one of those activities, incrementally building on, could be, let's come up with a community service project. Oh, look at this house here. They really need their weeds pulled in their yard. Maybe one of these days we're all as a team going to go weed this yard, or we're going to offer to buy paint and paint the outside of this house, or the park needs a little bit of a facelift. There's something we could do in the park to paint the trash cans, make it look nicer, so that we are not just teaching them that this time is, it feels good to be out in nature and it's a downtime for me, and it becomes a self-indulgent thing, but it becomes a way to actually connect back to the world. So interesting to think about. I think these are, I guess, and just to kind of go back to my original question to you. So are you... You may have answered it then.
No, it's fine. I'm being sarcastic.
Are you still kind of like, after this conversation, are you still kind of firm on, because it sounds like you were saying earlier that Rousseau's ideas are not really relevant in the 21st century world? I think you really have to take, there's a lot of adaptation that's going to happen with Rousseau. Like, I think kind of what we're talking about, like we would, Unplugged Friday. I think that's where you turn the control over to the nature. And then when you start to go outside and start to do stuff of like, hey, drawing, experiential, I think that's where we're letting some Rousseau in the door. We're not letting him into the classroom all the way. We're saying like, all right, I don't trust you completely, Rousseau. You got some crazy ideas. We're gonna do a little bit of it. We're not. You don't get full control. We're putting you on restriction. So I think Rousseau, the idea of naturalism, I think there's a pieces and part of it, but I think it's really, if you were to take this to districts that are fully online, that are all Chromebooked up, and they are technology to the max, they're going to be like, I don't understand what you're talking about. Like, we don't, what do you mean unplug? I don't understand that. I don't get it. What are you talking about? I don't understand that. And that's the danger of selling out your metaphorical soul to ed tech companies and Chromebooks and things like that, is that you end up losing the human side of things. You end up losing the human instruction. You end up losing the human engagement. And I think for us in our building, we've found a balance, because it's all on Canvas, it's all on Chromebooks, but we work with the students every day, and we're there with them, letting them know, having conversations with them, doing direct instruction pieces when they need help, helping them understand, showing them the way, and showing them what it looks like to figure this out. We model for them a lot of times how that works. So I don't know. I'm not sold out on Rousseau, and I don't think I ever will be, and I don't think I ever was, really, when I think about my educational learning, as I was learning about all the educational theorists.
I think he has a place, but again, I don't think it's the whole thing. He gets a place at the dinner table, but it is not at the center. And so each of these guys, as we kind of go through these conversations, they probably will have at least earned a place at the table. I will say, and this is going to sound super mean, but you know Alfie Kohn? Alfie Kohn sits at the kids' table. He doesn't get to sit. He doesn't get to sit at the adult table. I'm sorry.
I think you need to make reference for who Alfie Kohn is for listeners.
So, so Alfie Kohn, he hates competition, right? Mm-hmm. He is absolutely against competition. He's absolutely against, like, I think grading is one of those things he talks about not doing because it sets a kid up for competition and all this stuff. And he's like, no competition. And he was popular, I'd say 10 years ago. Alfie Kohn was everywhere.
1990s and 2000s.
Yeah, and he was on Twitter for a while. But I think people have kind of turned on him because they've kind of realized that so I talked about, I think last episode or one of the episodes, I talked about how a lot of Ivy League schools, they got rid of ranked of all these systems that were competitive based, right?
Mm-hmm. SAT,
ACT. They taught the merit based stuff, like all that stuff. Not just the Ivy Leagues, but other prominent high schools in the country. They said, "Oh no, we're getting away with that," and it was like, "Oh no!" And the result was nothing good happened. They found out, oh man, we need to have these competition, but they need to earn their spot. Like there's all this, so they put those programs back in place because of like, oh my gosh, this is bad. Funny side note before we go back to putting Alfie Kohn under the bus and running him over a couple times. There's a story I read this last week out of Harvard where they're talking about how everyone at Harvard is getting A's. And the concern is that because the professors were being pressured to make more A's for students so that they would feel better about their situation, that the grading at Harvard in this certain situation no longer mattered. So getting an A was just normal. Like it was all about, oh, they worked really hard on this, and they deserve an A. And it's like, I'm sorry, Harvard, what? Where's your rigor? Where's this? This is not so. There is and Alfie Kohn has inspired a lot of we don't do grading anymore. We don't do. Some schools have gotten rid of the not baccalaureate, wrong word. When graduation comes around, they have the valedictorian, salutatorian, whatever. Schools are like, no, we don't do that anymore because it's competition, and I'm just like, that's the whole point. You give something for kids to like aim for. Like, yeah, does it suck when you lose? Yeah, but if you work hard and get all A's, there is no question you're gonna be close to the top of the rank, or you'll be there. Like, but that's again the understanding that is great. Like, so yeah, why I say Alfie Kohn should sit at the kids' table? Absolutely, because his goal was to, and still is, I think he's still alive, is to take competition out of education. Now, it
exists in society,
right?
So.
And that was the big pushback on Alfie was like, dude, so you're suggesting that we should just give it to them, and then when they get into the real world, what happens when they're competing for a job? They're not gonna. Are they gonna have that natural like motivation to do well in the interview or to dress up, or even just at the job? Are they gonna perform well because they know that if they don't, there's going to be a competition for their future because they need to compete to stick around and to show their bosses that they are doing good work and that they're working hard and that they're like. So yeah, when I say it tongue in cheek at first, but I truly mean it. Alfie Kohn and his they need to sit at the kids' table because that's where you need to figure out this is not how life works. Life is full of competition. Life is hard. Learning is hard. It is hard, but guess what? You can do it. It can be done, but it has to be done. The act of learning is the piece that's hard, but once you continue to do that learning, it gets easier, but it doesn't get any easier. You accomplish and you keep. So learning should never be like just a plateau. Learning should always be a ladder, a step ladder, stairs, a mountain to climb, or the next mountain. The learning is never easy. Learning is, if it is, reevaluate the program you're in, because that should not be the case. Learning should be tough. You have to learn new concepts. You have to figure things out. You have to do the research. You have to be a part of a cohort. Like, that's learning. Learning is powerful because it's hard, because it molds our brains and it challenges us and it expands our understanding, it expands our knowledge, and it gives us the opportunity to level up in our professional world and our personal world. That is education. And Alfie Kohn, bless his heart, to borrow the Southern expression, does not. I don't know. I encountered him on Twitter, I think probably 10 years ago, and I was just like, okay, that's kind of cool. I have one of his books on my shelf that I refuse to read because I'm just like, I'm going to be angry by the time I get through halfway through it. But yeah, like Alfie Kohn and guys like that, I'm just like, you are suggesting that we just self-destruct the education system and start over with this, whatever you want it to. No, Alfie, go to your corner, go to your room. Alfie.
So I will just
apologies
say
to Alfie Kohn,
yeah,
but not really. Come on the show, Alfie.
So some of his essays I think are really worth exploring. Now, I mean, I don't agree with all of his ideas, but some of his essays, none of us let's not paint anybody with just a one big broad brush.
But it's so much easier that way.
I know, Aaron.
I accept the criticism.
I will say this: the issue about Harvard and grading, and and I mean that was something at other universities, and I know about that from my experience at university, is that there is pressure that also comes from donors and families, and and it's just sort of like,
do you want your evals to look good? Do softer grading.
And exactly. And, and kids are coming to you and they're, what do I need to do to get an A? What do I need to do to get an A? And it's not
follow the rubric, do the work, but show up.
But to some extent, it's just sort of like, you know what? If you try your hardest and you earn a real B in this class, we've gotten, I do think we need to think about competition too is driving this, because it's all inflated, and this idea that we're going to all kind of fix the game by making our scores look better, and you've got to have to be competitive in the job market. You've got to show that you've got straight A's or near straight A's. Then that also drives kids to kind of like think about a B as and I'm not talking like a B at our school where we have a different grading scale, but I'm talking about a B in a college class where that's not a failure. I got a B in trig and I got a B in calculus, and it's like, I can't believe I got a B in those classes. That I worked my butt off for those B's, and I could never have gotten an A in those classes. And and to some extent there's a learning experience too in making that lower and earning that lower grade, and that needs to be valuable. And yet we have, and this is not praising, this is not supporting Alfie Kohn, but we need to take a look at how competition and how other practices and pressures on the post-secondary and and university system have created this drive that if I don't have straight A's, I'm not going to make it in the world, and what that does to students too.
Well, there was the controversy, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago, where all those famous people were getting their kids into the colleges down in California, and I know other places where people were doing the SAT tests for them, and there were these people who were doing this, and so it was a big blow up of like, the parents were so concerned about having the prestige of having their kids in these schools, when it really didn't mean anything. Like their workout, they were, we're on the rowing team, but they weren't really. They were just showing up and hanging around, and there wasn't actually any work being put. So there's this idea that like, you have to do the work no matter what. And I think that's where we come into the mild edging into some socialistic kind of pieces, and then quickly exiting. Is that your money shouldn't get you everything. Yes, our Ivy League schools are more expensive because they're more prestigious. Yes. However, recently they've proven that maybe they aren't as good as they think they are. But that's the idea is that if it's worth it, you will find a way to get there. You will find a way to work hard, to work the extra hours, whatever it takes. You'll do it without obviously compromising your integrity. That's the thing I think that we need to remind students about, remind everybody about. Like, look, you can get where you want to get, but it's going to take time, effort, and hard work, and a lot of it's going to be hard, and it's a struggle. And that's the nature of the business, of any business you're in. You're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to struggle. You're going to have to push yourself. It's not just going to happen because you want it to happen or because you believe it's going to happen. It happens because you worked for it. And we found out, obviously, there's some exceptions to those rules these days. But like that's the message. Do you want it? Cool. Let's go work for it. Yeah. And that's I think the core of any educational situation. Of you want to learn it? Let's work for it. Let's get it done. Let's figure it out. Let's learn it. Let's do the hard work. I've told students, learning is hard. That's the point. Because if it was easy, everyone would be like, oh, cool, I'm the smartest person in the world, and blah, blah, blah. But guess what? To learn something new, to learn a concept you weren't familiar with, that takes time. It takes effort. It takes work. It takes grit, determination, all those things to get there. I don't know how
hard isn't necessarily not fun.
Right. Yeah. Hard can be fun. I fully enjoy when I learn something new about podcasting or audio editing or video editing or how to use this and that. I'm like, wow, this is so cool. But other times, my master's program, sometimes it's not fun learning about school law. Like, that's dry as heck, but I do it because it's important. So sometimes it's fun and sometimes it's not. But accept that to get to the fun part of life, sometimes you have to do the hard work to get there. And is it worth it? Yes. But you have to work for it, and you have to work consistently for it, and you have to want it and own your part in the puzzle and the mistakes you make and do better and keep moving forward. I don't know how Rousseau would have felt about all that, but
I don't know.
He probably would have had some feelings of some kind. Okay, what are we doing next week?
Good question.
Alfie Cohn.
Well, yeah.
No.
Okay.
No, I've run him over with the bus too much today on the podcast. At some point, he'll come back around. What do you think?
Okay. Well, I mean, we could do Wollstonecraft because she actually directly responds to Emile, but it's also kind of in a very through a gendered lens, a vindication of the rights of women, and there's an educational piece in there. Or we could go to somebody that is more. We could. Oh my goodness! If you want to talk John Dewey, we could talk John Dewey.
We could do Dewey and Wollstonecraft. We could do them both. We could do a duo.
That would be a really interesting pairing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it. Wollstonecraft and Dewey coming up next time on the podcast for more exciting and adventurous. Whatever. I ran out of adjectives. For all the fun we have here on the Humanity Ed podcast. My name is Aaron.
I'm Julie.
And we will see you on the next episode where we will do the Dewey Wollstonecraft battle royale in the middle of the ring here on Humanity Ed. Until next time.